Phelp.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for advance sight of her statement. Let us remember that victims are at the heart of this. Young girls, some only 10 years old, were groomed and gang raped by men of predominantly...
Buckle up, because what you're about to hear in Parliament is one of the most explosive debates on grooming gangs and government inaction. Phelp tears into the Minister with shocking accounts of police failures, social worker cover-ups, and even government U-turns. But was it a powerful stand for victims? Or just another political blame game? Let's break this down.
Pakistani origin. Girls like Jane, just 12 years old, when she was raped by an illegal immigrant. When she was found by police, instead of arresting the rapist, the police arrested Jane. Or Anna, only 15 years old, who repeatedly told social workers that she had been gang raped. Instead of helping her, they allowed her to marry her main abuser in an Islamic ceremony. The social worker even attended the ceremony. The ringleader of the Rochdale rape gang, Shabir Ahmed, was actually employed as a welfare rights officer by Oldham Council. In another case, a man tried to rescue his young daughter from being raped, but instead of protecting her, the police arrested her dad. I spoke to a mother whose daughter was raped by taxi drivers of Pakistani origin. When she complained to social services, they said that if she dared to raise the matter again, she would lose her daughter. And I spoke to a retired police officer who was himself told by a senior officer at the time to stop investigating abuse by Pakistani origin taxi drivers in Bradford because the police locally did not want to offend Bradford's Muslim community. A former Labour MP, Simon Danchuk, was even told by senior Labour Party figures to stop asking questions in his constituency to avoid antagonising the Muslim community. So these crimes were deliberately covered up by people in authority because so-called community relations were seen as more important than protecting young girls. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is a disgrace. Now, the Minister claimed...
Notice what's happening here. Phelp isn't just recounting horrors of grooming scandals. He's making a direct accusation that the government dragged its feet and only acted when public outrage and parliamentary pressure left them no choice. That line about the Prime Minister smearing campaigners as far-right, only to later adopt their demands, is brutal political theater. But here's the key question. Was this delay about incompetence, or was it political calculation? And more importantly, did victims lose out because protecting the government's image came first? What do you think? Was Phelp right to call this a disgrace, or was his attack unfairly politicized? Drop your thoughts in the comments.
In her statement a moment ago that nothing had been done about this previously. And I don't want to dwell on this, but I will gently remind her that it was the last government that set up the original Rotherham inquiry in 2014, set up the long-running ICSA inquiry, which was much broader but did touch on this, started to collect data on the ethnicity of suspects, set up Operation Soteria to combat sex crimes, and I attended many meetings on that, set up the Grooming Gang Task Force that led to 550 arrests in its first year, I'm glad that's continuing, and introduced legislation to require mandatory reporting, and again I'm glad the government is continuing that work. It is clear, however, that much more is needed. But this government has had to be dragged kicking and screaming every step of the way. When the government's rejection of Oldham's call for a national inquiry became public on January the 6th, the Prime Minister disgracefully smeared as, quotes, far-right those supporting calls for that proper inquiry. That kind of language is how these crimes got covered up in the first place. Now, 10 days later, the government partially U-turned and announced local inquiries. And then, on the 16th of June, faced with a parliamentary vote 2 days later, the government finally announced a statutory national inquiry. Not because they chose to, not because they wanted to, but because they were forced to. What the Prime Minister claimed was a far-right bandwagon in January had become government policy by June. And here we are, Madam Deputy Speaker, 3 months later. Almost no progress has been made. My office has been in contact with survivors in Oldham today, and they have heard nothing. Now we discover no chair has been appointed, there are no terms of reference, there is no news on towns like Oldham or Bradford, nothing of substance at all. This is just not good enough. So will the Minister tell the House precisely when a chair will be appointed and when we will have terms of reference, a precise date? Will this inquiry have full statutory powers under the 2005 Act? Will she confirm all 50 towns affected will be covered? Will she confirm that no police force or council will be able to investigate themselves? And will she confirm, perhaps most importantly, that this inquiry will look at those in authority, police, CPS, local councils, who deliberately covered this up, because those people were more interested in appeasing certain minority communities than they were in protecting young girls? And finally, does she agree with me that those individuals responsible for deliberately covering this up should be prosecuted for misconduct in public office, and if they are convicted, sent to jail?
Minister.
I thank partially the Shadow Home Secretary for his tone. I'd just like to correct the record. I didn't say that he had done nothing. What I said, that Baroness Casey had said that there had been a decade of inaction of these appalling crimes by previous governments, was exactly what I said. I also answered in my statement many of the questions that he has asked. What I will not do, and his office may have spoken to some of the Oldham victims today. I spoke to some of them personally last night, and so I keep in touch with lots of victims. And what I will not do, what I will never do, is make it so that they are not involved, and it takes time to make sure that this process is completely victim-centred. And I will, frankly, what I will say to him, and I am sure that this is what he and others on his side have written to me about requesting, will want to see that too. And that is the process that we are undertaking. In answer to his question, no local authority area can turn it down. I have said, and the Home Secretary has said a number of times, it is a full, powerful statutory inquiry. And I have to say, I have seen some scaremongering, and victims have written to me to say, oh, this won't cover government officials, it won't cover people who covered things up. Absolute nonsense. Let me say and be very clear, and it be taken away by everybody who I'm sure has the victim's best interests at heart, that it will cover what it needs to cover to uncover the truth. And no stone will be left unturned. And that will make difficult conversations for people. And if people are found by our court system to have undermined and had, disgrace in public office, then of course they should be sent to prison. However, that has never happened to date in these cases. And so, of course, I very much hope that we uncover the kind of social workers that he referred to, and I hope that they face the full force of everything that they deserve to face. But there is absolutely nothing that says that anybody can avoid this. It will be up to the inquiry, which is independent and statutory, to look and work with areas about where this will be.
Yeah.
Notice what's happening here. Chris Phelp isn't just recounting horrors of grooming scandals. He's making a direct accusation that the government dragged its feet and only acted when public outrage and parliamentary pressure left them no choice. That line about the Prime Minister smearing campaigners as far-right, only to later adopt their demands, is brutal political theater. But here's the key question. Was this delay about incompetence, or was it political calculation? And more importantly, did victims lose out because protecting the government's image came first? What do you think? Was Phelp right to call this a disgrace, or was his attack unfairly politicized? Drop your thoughts in the comments.